without any further ado, I'd like to hand over to Andrew to give his presentation. Thank you very much, Andrew.
Right, thanks, Steve, for the introduction. Move my slide. Okay. So yeah, again, thanks, Steve, for the introduction. Steve mentioned my name is Andrew. Worked in the company for 5 years now. Just a bit of background, sort of before we start, I did a postdoc at the National University of Singapore before I started as a medical writer in 2019 with Oxford PharmaGenesis. And since my postdoc days, I've always been sort of interested in the AI and data science field. And in around 2021 or so, I then joined the AI and data science team at Oxford PharmaGenesis. And since then, I've been working on a range of data visualization and AI-related projects, and even more recently with language models as well. And I don't claim to know everything about AI and data science, but I hope that this presentation sort of gives you a bit of a flavor of what how AI could be used across different industries, especially in medical communications, but maybe in your own writing and other applications as well. So the title of my talk is The Future is Now, Adopting AI to Enhance Medical Communications. So the agenda and learning objectives today are to examine the differences between data science, artificial intelligence, AI, and large language models, LLMs for short. Illustrate how AI and LLMs can be used across different areas of medical communications. Consider the advantages and disadvantages of adopting AI and LLM tools in the industry. So, how did we get here? So, I guess it's important to start to say that AI technologies have been around for a long time, for many years. But in November 2022, that's when we sort of saw a bit of a global technology revolution, if you like, because of the release of ChatGPT, as most of you would know. And so that happened in November 2022. In 2023, we saw the release of more language models, and increasing awareness and adoption of generative AI accelerated across many industries, including the pharmaceutical industry as well. And in 2024, this year, we started to see this pace is increasing. So we're seeing a lot more language models being released, open source ones, closed source ones. A lot of these large companies are investing a lot of money and competing with each other to develop models that have more capabilities, larger in size, larger in scope. And we're also seeing more and more use cases of AI across different industries. And it's hard to predict the future, but what we think is going to happen is that that companies and individuals that are harnessing AI technologies effectively will likely have a competitive edge. And AI promises to transform a lot of industries, create new opportunities, and also, I guess, ultimately improve patient care when it comes to the pharmaceutical industry. And to quote William Gibson here, the future is here, it's just unevenly distributed. So taking a step back, I've mentioned a few things like language models and AI. But what do these actually mean? Generative AI, what do they mean? So with AI and data science, they're related but distinct concepts. And basically they help us to use data effectively. And AI is a broad topic. I guess you could define it as technology for machines to perform human-like tasks, whereas data science is the collection, preparation, and analysis of data using statistics and computer science. Now, together, they allow us to work towards a vision of a world which we can then, which data can be used to transform patient care. An example of data science would be when, say, Airbnb processes and analyzes customer-generated data to predict customer behavior. AI, for example, would be digital assistants like Alexa that are part of our technology infrastructure these days. And what about generative AI and large language models? So generative AI is a type of AI that generates new content based on input data. So input data is usually a prompt. So you could ask it a question, it then generates an answer. And this content or this answer might not be just text. So it could be a video, it could be programming code as well. It depends on the model and how you prompt it. And large language models are the algorithms underpinning generative AI. So examples of large language models, I'm sure you know, GPT 3.5 Turbo and GPT-4. These are
recording in progress.
These are models developed by OpenAI. We've got Gemini. So these are a family of models that were developed by Google. And then we've got Llama 2, which are models that are developed by Meta. And for those of you who might not be familiar with large language models, I've given a screenshot here of a sort of typical interaction of how you would interact with these models. So you could ask it a question, you give it a prompt. What is ChatGPT? I'm asking ChatGPT to explain what it is. And it's given a very sort of long answer about how it's been developed by OpenAI and how it can generate human-like text, and then it engages in it can engage in conversations, and it's been trained on a lot of data. And what you can also do is then ask a follow-up question. So I've asked it to then summarize its answer into a single sentence, and it's given again a more succinct answer based on my prompt. So this is an example of interactions with a language models here. So what are some example applications of AI and large language models? Obviously, this list is not meant to be exhaustive. It's meant to give you a flavor of what's possible. And going through this, so we've got taking notes, we've got researching topics, writing and drafting, potentially automating SLR workflows, so systematic literature reviews, and also screening and summarizing literature. So in the context of note-taking, we're starting to see these language model assistants being integrated into platforms such as Microsoft Teams. And this is taken from the Microsoft website, where you've got these language models that could help you with summarizing key points that were discussed during a meeting and suggesting action items, brainstorming ideas for topic discussion, summarizing who said what, or identifying participants' concerns. And these transcripts and key points then could be used by the medical writers who were attending the meeting then for developing post-meeting reports. And this screenshot here just shows an example where you've got the team meeting, and then you've got on the side a little tab where you've asked for meeting notes, and then you can interact with the model that way through a chat box, if you like. So I guess language models could also be used as research assistants, especially when you're researching potentially an unfamiliar topic or therapy area. So, for example, you might be given a task of writing a paper on a topic that you might not be familiar with. And what you would generally do is go to PubMed and do a PubMed search. And it's very similar to that. So there are many platforms that allow you to do this. I'm giving an example of SciSpace. This is the example presented here, where you just ask a question. So why are aging patients with COVID-19 more susceptible to severe complications? And what it does, it then goes, the model then, the platform then allows you to go and search PubMed, and it returns these answers. So it's returned the top 10 papers here, and you've got the article titles on one column. The insights column gives you a summarized answer for each of these articles based on your question. So you could quickly then scan through and identify which of these papers might be more relevant so that you can go in and do further research. You could add other columns as well. In this case, we've got a column talks about methods used. So it's trying to explain what sort of methods we use to generate the results. Again, a nice sort of summary, top-line summary for you to then decide whether you want to shortlist this paper and do further reading of the full text, for example. And also, it provides this insights from the top 5 papers. So a short paragraph summarizing the answers from the top 5 papers. So you can have a quick look again, get a top-line summary of how these papers answer your research question. So it could potentially act as a time saver, especially when you might not know where to start in an unfamiliar therapy area. So I've talked about the background research, like SciSpace helping with that. But I guess the language models and tools could be used across the entire manuscript development process. So you could ask the models to help generate a manuscript outline or even specific sections, like introduction, results, discussions, etc. You could ask it to act as a journal reviewer, so you could then brainstorm ideas, or you could ask it to provide critiques or identify gaps within your outline and your manuscripts. You could ask the model to draft an abstract or draft a plain language summary, or even provide general recommendations based on an abstract. So there's a few, the applications here could be used across the whole process. So moving to sort of systematic literature reviews, this is where you do spend a lot of time screening title, abstracts, and full papers based on pre-specified inclusion and exclusion criteria. And this is where AI language models could help as well. So you could use, say, AI-based prioritization based on your inclusion and exclusion criteria to then identify papers that are most relevant, or you could get language models themselves to provide a include or exclude decision based on those criteria, and title and abstract and full papers as well. And also data extraction. So if you had, say, if you wanted to identify, if you had a specific question in mind, like, if you want to identify how many patients are in particular treatment arms for a particular paper, you could ask that question and the LLMs would then extract out the data as well. Again, it depends on the specific application here, but there are potential applications that could be used that could use LLMs. Covering topic modeling very briefly as well. So this is sort of related. Both AI and LLMs could do topic modeling. And for those of you not familiar with it, it's basically a technique where you group articles. Well, you group text. So it could be abstracts, for example, from a PubMed search into related topics. So say if you did a PubMed search and you end up with, say, 5,000 abstracts, and topic modeling is a way of then organizing these abstracts into topics. And you could then delve into specific topics that you were interested in. And you can then look at those subset of papers that you might be interested in, and therefore potentially save you some time rather than reading the whole list of results. So essentially, you could speed up literature reviews, you could summarize literature into digestible themes, you could uncover topics that might have been otherwise overlooked. And I think identifying topics from different types of text, so you could use it not just for abstract, but for social media data or news articles, web articles. So these are not limited specifically to just scientific abstracts. I give one example where we've used topic modeling. So as a case study was here. So we presented a poster at ISMAP in 2023. So we used topic modeling here to group articles into distinct groups. And to give a bit of context, so this particular poster was about what was a linguistic analysis of a clinical trial that was a very small clinical trial that involved 14 patients, 14 patients with rectal cancer who were receiving a drug called dostarlimab. And this particular trial generated a lot of interest, a lot of media interest, because there was a 100% response rate in the patients that were receiving the drug. And but even though it was a very small trial of just 14 patients. So what we did here, we went out and we collected news and web articles related to this trial. And then we used topic modeling then to group them into distinct groups. So we had 3 groups in particular here. The New York Times ran an article on this trial, and there were articles that were very similar to those. So to the New York Times article, there was articles that were similar to the NPR article, and an NEJM abstract, an editorial, and there was a group that was quite similar to those to the NEJM group. And what we did then was we did linguistic analysis. So we looked at how the words were being used across these groups. And what we found was when you say compare the NPR group and the NEJM group, you get an overabundance of words such as scientific miracle or paradigm shift or 100% cure being used in these articles more frequently than the NEJM type of articles. So topic modeling can be used on its own to help you organize the literature when you're doing a lit review, but it can also be used as a upstream analysis before you then do further analysis on those groups. So go back to literature screening and with language models. So this is another case study where we looked at, we were developing these newsletters, and we used the language models to filter for relevant articles based on specific inclusion and exclusion criteria that we had, shortlisting articles as well from that filtered set, and also summarizing the information. And the language model did very well with the filtering of the relevant articles, and also with the summarizing of the information. So summarizing these abstracts into a structured summary, where the summary itself had these 8 sort of sections. And the medical writer who was working on this project was generally was very happy with the summarization, because it allowed him to look at this summary and quickly screen for papers if he needed to, without reading the entire abstract. So I guess another application here is when how language models, and I've partly shown it with SciSpace, but in this case, it's you're querying documents. So from PubMed, from bioRxiv, from medRxiv, and what you're trying to do here is what we've been doing here is biomarker discovery. So we're mapping the landscape of biomarkers for a particular protein complex called CDK4/6, which is involved in breast cancer. And what this map shows is, so in blue are the questions that we've asked the model, and the model has gone out, has found answers to those questions, and we've mapped it here as a network map. And you can see it's found certain potential biomarkers, and the lines just show the connections between those answers and the questions. So using language models like in this context could be used for then mapping biomarker landscapes, and you can then take the short list to further refine and to do further research on them. So it's not just, in our industry. I mean, the language models itself have been used across into even the pharmaceutical industry. And here are just some examples, where Pfizer has developed Charlie, a new sort of generative AI tool that could be used for creating marketing content. Amgen is looking at how these partnering with NVIDIA and how language models could be used for drug discovery and protein engineering. And Gilead as well exploring how language models could be used for therapeutic target assessment. So, it's being used across the industry, I would say. So what is next for AI and large language models? And again, I think it's hard to predict the future, but what we're seeing is there's increased availability of open source models such as Gemma, developed by Google, on platforms such as Hugging Face, which is a repository of open source models. And these could then lead to more customized AI and language model tools in the future. We also think multimodal language models we're seeing more of these as well. So these are models that, say, for example, take text, and instead of generating more text as an answer, it can generate images, audio, video, etc., or vice versa. So you could take video and audio or pictures and change that into text. However, I guess there are challenges, and I've only listed two here, but there's other ones where there is the issue of model hallucinations. So hallucinations is loosely defined as when a model generates an answer that might not have correct information or might not be accurate. You can reduce the possibility of this by grounding your answers with context. There is also the issue of data privacy. So if you are working with commercially sensitive data or data, I think in general, it's probably good to always be aware of this with the fact that models can use data that's fed into it for further training purposes. And one way around this is really to just host your own models on your own infrastructure, so it never leaves the organization. But that requires a bit of technical know-how and a bit of compute power as well. So I think we've talked about quite a few applications of language models in AI, but what's important is that it should be aligned with established guidelines they use. So we're starting to see journals issuing guidelines of the appropriate use of AI and language models in publications and how you should disclose it if you use them. And I think medical writers should really also refer to client and company policy before using these tools, just to ensure that everyone's in line with this. And also, although useful, very useful, undisclosed use of language models could be problematic. So this is an excerpt from an actual paper that was published this year, I believe. And it says, in summary, the management of bilateral iatrogenic And then you get a response from the model saying, I'm very sorry, but I don't have access to real-time information or patient-specific data as I'm an AI language model. And the author has not disclosed the use of a language model in this case, but I think it's easy enough to deduce that there was some use of this in writing the paper. And so I think not disclosing it could be very problematic. Also, it would be good to be as transparent as possible, I think, but make sure, it's aligned with journal and company policies before implementing these tools. And I think that's all from me. So a short presentation, but I hope it was useful, and I'm happy to discuss things further.